What's up guys, Universal Mastery. So, excuse me one second. What I do on my channel is I break down the occult sciences and I break them down to an extremely practical level so that you can use them and apply them in your day-to-day life and get real, actual results. Now what we're going to be talking about in today's video is a video that was requested by one of my viewers. Right now, I had to put a post on my YouTube channel a couple days ago. There it is. A couple days ago, and the name of the post was "Send me your video requests." So right now, literally, I'm going down the list of requests because I want to cover the topics that people want to know about. Okay, so this is the third request that I received, and what we're going to be covering in today's video is why are some people more drawn towards the darker side of spirituality when it comes to getting into the occult and black magic, things in that nature. And there's pretty much two questions in this one, and the other half of it is why are the darker forces more prominent in regards to how come the demonic seem to manifest a lot more effectively, and how come the demonic presence or that dark energy seems to be more potent? Why is it when I work with demons, I really feel they're present? And why is it when I work with like the lighter side of things, or, whatever you're working with, it's not as strong, or it doesn't feel as potent? So all of these things that I just mentioned, we are going to be covering in this video today. So if you want to know a little bit more about what I'm talking about, then stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is definitely make sure you go and you check out my Patreon. On my Patreon, I have exclusive content. Now, half of this content is going to be geared towards actual spiritual practices that I break down, I perform myself. They're very important practices that I think you need to know. For example, invocation. That is literally the most important thing you need to know when you start to get into the occult, so that you can actually start working with spirits yourself. Now, what an invocation is when you're calling on a spirit, and what I have on my Patreon is a video where I break down how to do an invocation, because there is a system to it. There is a technique to make it more effective, and at the end of the day, there is a science to it. So I break down the science, the technique, and the system of being able to have spiritual communication, and I do it in a very practical way, and it's really simple at the end of the day. So it doesn't need to be so complicated. It's not like some of you reading one of those books and you're like, what am I reading right now? Very simple, very effective. What I apply in my day-to-day life is what I have on my Patreon when it comes to the practices. There's nothing on there that I don't do myself. There's nothing on there that I haven't got real results with myself. So half of the content is going to be geared towards that. Then the other half of the content is going to be geared towards educational entertainment, which is a video that's very similar to this one. The video is entertaining, but there's also a lot of value from it. So in order to find the Patreon, you're going to go to the description. It's going to drop down. You're going to see that first link at the top of the description. It's going to say My Patreon right next to it. Click that link. In order to gain access to these exclusive videos that are not on my YouTube channel, you have to at least be a Tier 2 member or up. In order to be a Tier 2 member, it costs $9.95 a month, and that's a reoccurring payment. But if you do the math, that literally costs less than $1 a day. So there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to afford that with the value that I have on the Patreon. Okay, as you go up in tiers, the benefits go up as well. I'll let you check that out for yourself. And I would love to give a special shout out to the top tier members of the Patreon. I'm going to have their names mentioned below in the parentheses. So huge shout out to you guys. All right, other than that, let's go right into this video. So here's the thing. Why is it, okay, let's work, since this question that I received to make this video has two questions inside of it, I'm going to cover one of them first. The first part of this question that I'm going to cover is, why are some people more drawn towards the occult? Why are, not just the occult, but more drawn towards the darker side of the occult? Because when we talk about the occult, there definitely is many different aspects of the occult. Occult in its totality means hidden. When you start talking about magic, there's many different aspects to magic. There is definitely a lighter aspect. There is definitely a darker aspect. There's also a middle, like a gray aspect, the death current, which is known to be in the middle. So, there's many different aspects, and we definitely want to be clear. So the question that the person had is, why are some people more drawn towards the darker side of the occult? Now, there could be many different answers to this question. There could be many different reasons why people are drawn towards the darker side of the occult, and I'm going to cover some of the most prominent ones. I think one of the most prominent reasons why some people are naturally drawn towards the darker side of the occult, and this is going for certain kinds of people that are actually practicing this art. So what I mean is, for someone that was just born, lived their life, and then has stumbled across the occult and then became a serious practitioner that takes their craft very serious and is getting results from it. This is the kind of person that I'm talking about. For someone like that, the question is, why did they naturally get drawn towards the darker side of the occult? Why is that? Well, a lot of it can do with past lives. Okay, a lot of it can do with previous incarnations that they may have had where they have been involved in the occult before. A lot of it can have to do with your bloodline. So for those of you that don't know, your blood carries genetic codes in it. With these genetic codes that your blood carries, there's information, there's characteristics, there's beliefs already installed in your blood that flows through your body. Now, that just because you have these genetic codes running through your blood doesn't mean you can't change them, doesn't mean you're permanently stuck to your own genes or your genetic code. You can change them, you can alter them, but that genetic code that you come into this earth with is definitely going to have an effect on your life. So if you come from a background of witches, warlocks, occult practitioners that were doing black magic or that were involved in some form of black magic, and this can go very far back, then you are a lot more likely to be drawn towards the occult in your current life. So I'll give you a little bit example in my own experience of why this is for me or how this has happened for me. So it's funny because I was naturally drawn towards the occult. I was raised a Christian. My dad's a very strong Christian, but he's actually he's not like most Christians. He's it's actually kind of funny, like what he is. He's actually it's hard to explain, but he's actually more so of like a black magician, and he doesn't realize it for sure. But his attitude, and my dad destroys people, and he does it psychologically. He's an amazing salesman. He's the top in his company by a long shot. He's a successful guy, but he's wrapped up in the Christian religion. Because he found, through his past traumas, he found peace, or he found a stable state of mind through Christianity from feeling like you're being saved, which is pretty much like a booby trap, catches people in, makes them settle for, whatever. My dad, in his nature, is a very powerful man. He's got very strong ideas. He likes bringing order to chaos. When he has an idea on something, he makes sure that people know it. He has no problem venting how he feels, and you can feel his presence when he comes around. And if someone disagrees with him, he doesn't turn his shoulder and say, "Oh, whatever." He will confront the person until he pretty much will psychologically attack people, and it's not in a way that's off-putting. It's not in a way that's like, "Yo, chill out, bro." It's in a way that's like, this person is actually convincing me of what they believe. He's really good, but it's unfortunate that he's a Christian. But it is what it is, and I guarantee you I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if he wasn't a Christian. So, I learned a lot from it. Maybe that was part of what I needed to grow up with. Maybe he's supposed to be a Christian because I was supposed to be a black magician, and I needed to learn from that as I was growing up. And I went through a lot of challenges being raised by him and being raised by his belief of Christianity. So when I grew up, my dad used to tell me, "Jared," at a young age, he used to be like, "Jared, if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell." And he, I knew what hell was. Hell, if you went to hell, you were going to burn, your soul was going to be taken, you would be stuck for eternity. And that's what I believed. So he raised me in a very strict way with Christianity. But that caused me to really understand what Christianity is. And at its worst, when someone's trying to indoctrinate you into their own belief system, that's what he tried to do to me, and that's what he did to me for a while. So I had an opportunity to break out of that, and it took a lot of strength, a lot of willpower, and a lot of knowledge to be able to break out of that myself at a younger age. So I started to kind of separate myself from his belief system, I want to say around the age of like maybe late 17s, 18. And that was a whole process within itself, but that made me extremely strong, the fact that I was able to do that. And once again, I wouldn't be who I am right now or where I'm at right now, doing what I do right now, if it wasn't for that experience of me growing up in a household like that and with mental constructs that were trying to be in place, about him trying to tell me I need to be a Christian, and that's the only way, that's the only path there is to being saved, and the only path, whatever. So what I'm saying though is that our last name, me, my dad, our last name is Schwartz. Now, my dad never knew what Schwartz meant, but it is a German word. My dad doesn't know anything about his ancestorship because he's Christian. He doesn't believe he needs to look into that. So of course, I started looking into these things because I know these have prominent significance embedded into this information. So everything's symbolic, so there is a reason, there's essentially a reason for everything. When you go into something and unpack something, you can learn a lot. Now, especially when something's connected to your name, especially like something exactly like that, like connected to your name or attached to you, you definitely want to look into those things because those things have a lot of significance. Like my name is Jeremiah. That is the name that I was, that's my name. And there's a lot of significance to that name. Jeremiah was a prophet. And there's a lot of stuff that I still want to uncover about my name. But I definitely make YouTube videos. I definitely speak about things very passionately. Prophets are known to be people that speak during very important times of evolution when people need to hear certain messages. So, it doesn't necessarily mean I agree with, Jeremiah in the Bible being the prophet that he was. Do I think I'm just like that prophet? No. Do I think there's some things in the Bible that mention Jeremiah that I feel like I could attribute to myself? Absolutely. It's pretty interesting. And that's, so that's important to know. But my last name, and as I was saying, my dad's last name is Schwartz. And Schwartz means black in German. And if you do a little bit of research, the German race, or the German ethnicity, I should say, they have a lot of connections to the occult in general. You can do your own research with that, but they definitely were some of the most advanced occultists. And they still do have some very advanced psychic technology to this day that is kind of behind closed doors. Most people don't know about. So that's one thing. But my last name is Schwartz, and I never knew what my last name meant because my dad never taught me about what our last name meant or where it even came from or the importance of what your last name means. So, I ended up, ever since I started pursuing black magic and the occult, and I started doing path working, sure enough, I uncovered this information. How did I uncover this information? Very fascinating. Well, I was at a GNC, I was buying something, and this lady saw my last name because I was putting in my phone number to get a discount, and she says, "Whoa, your last name's Schwartz? That's my last name too." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome." And she goes, and out of nowhere, she goes, "Do you know what that means?" And like, isn't that kind of random? Like, she just asked me, "Do you know what your last name means?" Like she knew or something. Almost like there was a spirit in her trying to communicate that information with me, and that's exactly what was happening. That's what you will come across when you do path working. But she ended up saying that, and I said, "No, I actually don't know what Schwartz means." She says, "It means black." And I was like, interesting, very interesting. Me being a black magician, me being heavily involved with black magic and doing path working through black magic black magic types of initiations, working with the darker side of the tree, working with the darker spirits that exist here on earth. So my last name means black, and then that made a lot of sense to me, because I was like, you know what, this makes tons, because I started to ask myself the same question. Why am I so drawn towards the darker side of the occult? Was it because my upbringing was so crazy, chaotic, so tough? And there definitely is an aspect to that. That's where my fire came from. That's how I became so strong when it comes to my willpower. But no, the reason why I'm so drawn into black magic and why I'm going through pathworking at the age that I am, which is pretty young, I'm 24 right now, and I'm doing pathworking on an advanced level, like on a level that most people don't go through, especially my age. But the reason is because I come from a lineage of people that have done this. And this is nothing new to me. This is just me doing this in this lifetime at an early age, so that in my future I can really create the things that I need to create a lot more effectively, rather than me being like 50 years old, then getting into pathworking, then being finished around the age of 60, then creating my life from the age of 60. I'm 24. By the time I'm going to be done pathworking is actually going to be pretty soon here, and then I'm going to be able to start creating my empire from my kingdom, being Malkuth, that final sphere. If you do pathworking, it's all interconnected with the Tree of Life, things of that nature. So if you want to know a little bit more about the Tree of Life, definitely make sure you check out my Patreon, because I talk about it on there. But yeah, so this is the thing. So when she said that, it made a lot of sense. Now this is the really interesting part. Now, okay, let me actually add this too. So yes, I come from an ancestorship that has done black magic before. You know, my last name is connected to Schwartz, black. And that doesn't mean that I just come from a lineage that has done black magic. That could mean that in my past life, I've done black magic as well, and I've done this form of pathworking in my past life, and maybe in another past life. However many past lives I may have had, I may have gone through this form of pathworking multiple times. Once again, this might not be anything new to me or anything new to you if you feel so drawn towards the occult, okay? And this is the interesting thing. When I talked to my dad and I let him know what our last name meant, he said that's not our real last name. He said our real last name is Wawa. And that sparked even more interest in me, because there still is a reason why my last name is Schwartz, why my last name is Black, why there's black connected to my name. But if that's not my real last name, that sparks interest for me. Like, why is that not really my last name? Why did we adopt this last name? Why did this come into our family? And there's a lot of things that, I have to still uncover. I have to do a lot of research to fully figure this out. But once again, everything is symbolic. There's a reason why my last name is Schwartz. And there's a surface level reason for all of this as well. Like, maybe I had some ancestorship that was in Germany, and maybe they were from a different area, and maybe they had to adopt the last name Schwartz in order to be protected or to be kind of undercover. But that is a surface level of symbolism. There's also a more macro level of symbolism to that, where black magic, maybe my ancestorship adopted this last name, as I was saying, Schwartz, to be protected. Well, that's essentially saying, there's a symbol to that. Maybe the last name being Black was black magic, a black magic form of protection. Maybe that's symbolism. Maybe there were spirits guiding my ancestors that gave them that information that they need to change their last name to be protected, and that attached that symbol to my family or to my ancestorship, and that was a form of protection. So there's always symbolism. You always want to look a lot deeper than what the surface shows. So that's that. So that may be a big reason why some of you are extremely geared towards the darker side of the occult. Now let's talk about another reason why some people might be drawn towards the darker side of the occult. There are some people, and I'm going to cover this in its truth, okay? There are some people that are more drawn towards the edgy side of life. They want to be the rebels, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but I'm going to tell you what is true, okay? I'm going to tell you what you see most often. When you see people that are more drawn towards the occult because they like that edgy lifestyle and they like that being like that rebel where they're dyeing their hair, they're getting all these piercings, they're getting tattoos everywhere and all that stuff. Once again, none of these things are bad. I'm not saying any of these are bad, but if people are getting into the occult because they like the aesthetic, because they like the surface understanding, like, oh, hail Satan, I like the symbolism just because of the aesthetic, just because my parents don't like it, just because people think it's not okay, that's very surface reason to really get into the occult. Now, that's okay if you're getting into the occult from the aesthetic to be kind of that rebel type of person or have that rebel type of mentality, and you actually use that to give you leverage to actually get into the occult, where you then start working with spirits, start pursuing path working, then that makes sense. That's reasonable. That's awesome. That's great. That's powerful. But if you're using the occult, the darker side especially, to just be an aesthetic, then you're pointless. Like you're wasting your time, and you're probably doing yourself more harm, because this occult, this dark world of the occult, black magic, is not a joke. This shit really will change your life. And if you think it's funny to just use your Ouija board and, you know, talk to a ghost and say you're a black magician and dress like you're a black magician, and you just want to be a little more aware of what you're actually working with and what is the potential here. The occult, the darker side of the occult, is meant for people to empower themselves. If your interest is not in line with wanting to empower yourself or self-develop yourself, if that's not what's drawing you towards the darker path of the occult, then I would recommend not getting into the occult at all. Okay, I would recommend that. That's just a fact. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say about that. Now we're going to cover the idea of why does it seem like the darker forces are a lot more potent in regards to manifestation. Why does it seem like the occult, black magic forces, the demonic forces, the infernal forces can manifest a lot more effectively? Why do I feel like I can feel their presence a lot more than when I'm working with angels or when I'm working with light beings, the Elohim, when I'm doing my light work or whatever? Why does it feel like when I get into the black magic, shit gets real and I can feel it? Why? And this is actually something that I was just on a phone call with somebody about, and they said the same thing. They said, like, I was working with this angel and I feel like I lost the connection, and I don't know, I want to build that connection again. And I said, you know what? Well, there's a whole mechanic to it, right? The angels and the demons are a completely different species. You can think of it as what's a good way? You can think of it as this. You have a lion and you have a shark. Completely different species. One is living on land and the other is in the ocean. Okay, completely different species. So when you are, and I'm not going to go into this person's story, but essentially they were working with the angelic and they lost the connection. And then I said, in regards to what was in their best interest, once again, I'm not going to go into it in detail here because that's not what's important. But the demonic is what is I would say, if you're getting into the occult and you want to experience real transformation, once again, real power, real things manifesting, you are going to want to start with invocation of the Ars Goetia, invocation of a demon, okay? I would recommend starting with an Ars Goetia demon that you feel drawn towards. There are different hierarchies to some of these spirits. Some of them, if you are a beginner and you try working with some of the higher hierarchies right off the bat, and you're a beginner, maybe you don't have enough knowledge, enough wisdom, enough understanding, that spirit may not work with you, and you may not get any results at all. When you start with the Ars Goetia, you most likely are going to get some form of results. I can almost guarantee that. Unless you're entering into this very disrespectful, trying to like prove a point that it's not real, you'll probably just get fucked up. It's not that you won't get results, but you'll probably experience a lot of bad luck. A lot of bad things will happen to you. You'll get results in that regard. So go ahead and try that. It doesn't matter to me. But just so you're aware, you will get some form of results when you start working with the Goetia for sure, because they're meant to help improve, help people evolve. Okay, and the Goetia helps people evolve that work with them. if you're not working with the Goetia and you don't want to work with the Goetia, they can be your worst enemy. They will feed off of you. They will fuck with you because they take energy from other people, the male principle specifically, and they give it to the feminine current that runs the Qliphoth, that runs the infernal hierarchy. So this is just what they do by their nature. So you can either ride the wave or get hit by the wave. I mean, and this is one of the big lies of society. They tell you not to work with, it's not that they don't tell you not to work with demons, but they don't talk about working with spirits. And when they talk about spirits, they say the demonic is evil and the angelic is great. But once again, the nature of an angel is to take from your soul and manifest into your physical reality. So you can imagine, if you're only working with the light beings and you're only working with angels, your soul is going to be fucking ripped out of your body. You're not going to have a soul anymore. You're going to feel like shit. You might have things that you want. You might get that job. You might get that promotion. You might get a raise. You might get a nice car, but you're going to feel like shit. On the other hand, the Ars Goetia are geared towards taking away the male principle and adding to the soul. Okay, so if you're working with them, they add to your soul, but they will, when you start with them, they will take away your male principle. And what that does is that makes you more feminine, makes you more receptive. Basically, you're a sponge at that point, and then they can give you the knowledge, the information you need to take the next steps that you need to take. And then you might find yourself stumbling across some path working. And as you do path working, that's where you're going to gain the real power. Okay, but first you got to develop yourself to the level where you're able to do path working. You don't necessarily want to just jump into path working right off the jump. Invocation is the best thing you can do. But this is also the reason why and yes, this is true, the infernal hierarchy, the demonic, they can manifest. I'm like literally seeing them manifest as I'm speaking. Like I'm seeing it happen. They manifest very easily. This current, the dark current, is way more potent than any other current that we can perceive here on Earth. And this is one of the reasons why the infernal hierarchy, the demonic forces, the Qliphothic current, the dark current, rules Earth. So the entire tree of life is the entire process of evolution itself when it comes to Earth and the human being. The Qliphoth, the dark current, is the roots of the tree. So the roots of the tree is what came first. So everything is truly ruled and governed by some form of demonic hierarchy and some form of infernal forces. So you definitely want to work with them in order to self-develop. Once again, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. Continue to do what you're doing. But the reason, and that's part of the reason why they can manifest a lot more potently, because they are here on Earth. This current, especially when it comes to the Ars Goetic demon, are very Earth, they're not Earth bound, but they're very Earth savvy spirits, meaning they have a lot of free range here on the physical plane. And they like being on the physical plane. Once again, their nature is to take the male principle from people to give to the feminine spirits of the dark current itself. So in order to take that male principle, they have to be here taking it from people. So when you work with them, then instead of being your enemy, they start serving you and start working with you. And the more power you develop by working with these spirits, the more power that you have to have them work in your life, the more control you have over them, essentially, to say, this is what I want you to do, this is what I want you to do, and you become your own essential, your own deity. You become your own God, essentially. You eventually establish this connection with your what's called the daemon, which is your own divine intelligence. Some people will say it's your higher self. Some people will say it's a connection between you and your subconscious mind. You will establish a strong connection with that, and you will become your own deity. And then there's a name that you can give this deity that is you, and you start empowering that, and you become a literal force on these different dimensions and in these different planes. So that's when you become very powerful, and that's the whole point of path working. But there is a long process and an excruciating process that you have to go to develop this ability. So once again, that is why the demonic hierarchy can manifest a lot more effectively here on Earth. And that is also why, from the first question, why some people are more naturally drawn towards the darker side of the cult. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't have much time left on the camera. So if you enjoyed this video, hit a thumbs up. Definitely hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. The Patreon is the first link in the description. Go to the second link below. It's going to take you to the Facebook community. Hit the pinned post. You're going to see private group here. Request to join. And I will see you guys on the next video. The video is going to literally end right here. See you guys on the next video. Peace.